Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Let me begin to tell you how delighted I am to be moderating this first panel and doing the full alignment with what I plan to do within DED and raise to my management right here. A full mapping of what need to do in the healthcare sector and other sectors is resembled today by the fine panelists that I will be introducing in a minute. I have with me His Excellency MOHAMED Al-HAMELI, Acting Undersecretary for the Department of Health in Abu Dhabi, who is shaping the future of healthcare in the Emirate and leading it in the MENA region. I have with me Mr. PRASANTH MANGHAT, who is the CEO of NMC, a role model of leadership in industrial healthcare management and extending his portfolio to other areas. And I have with me Professor Stan, who is deploying what he have encountered during his experience in teaching and implementing technology in healthcare. I'm delighted today, Your Honor, Your Excellencies, and I will start the panel by Mr. Mohammed. We've noticed, and it's clear, that the Department of Health is heading towards the future. Can you give us some light on what are the plans and what are you targeting in terms of research and development, technology and innovation?
Sure. So Department of Health of Abu Dhabi main objective is to improve the quality of healthcare in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. And to do that, as we want to enable and make sure that patients have access to innovative ideas and innovative treatments. The second thing is we need to create an ecosystem to allow such technologies to be researched and also to be implemented within the healthcare sector in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. We want the healthcare sector in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi not to follow others. Actually, we want to be leaders in innovations and also innovative treatments and help improve the quality of care in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi.
Leading innovation is a very key word, Your Excellency, and I will raise the second question to Mr. Prasanth. First of all, while I was researching the question for Your Excellency, I noticed that you've been listed in the FTSE 100, and I think it's within the last month or a couple of months, so congratulations for that. There is a transformation that you are embracing within NMC. You're heading towards innovation, technology, and maybe investments within these areas. Can you give us some inspirational speech on what you are aiming to do?
Sure. Thank you very much. You know, we're very proud that today, when NMC is sitting as one of the FTSE 100 constituent on the most coveted London Stock Exchange with more than $10 billion market cap, making us fourth largest healthcare company in the world. We are very proud that this has come and emerged out of this Emirate of Abu Dhabi. 44 years back, the seed was put in this soil of Abu Dhabi. And that has been the inspiration for the growth of NMC. Today, across the world, when you relook at it, we are in more than 13 countries. 8 million people use NMC's facilities in the world. And that is definitely, we believe, is the right turning point or the right point where NMC should start investing on technology.
Excellent. Professor Stan, we have the policymaker and we have an example of a firm that is doing lots of effectiveness in the ecosystem of healthcare, and we have you. And while chatting with you prior the event, I think you are a scholar who have so many papers, and you did the academia part, and you are now in the implementation part, and you have a specialization in policy making. What policies should we focus on to transform the healthcare sector in Abu Dhabi to the future?
That's a great question. And looking at the history of innovation and the development of innovation centers, for instance, in Singapore or Mumbai, where 50 years ago they were just coming out of literally being a swamp and being, coming out of World War II. And innovation can be managed, it can be grown. And so if you look at the policies that helped create these innovation centers in Singapore and Mumbai, you see these core policies. One, free capital flow, absolutely critical. Number two, complete and total, and this is appropriate considering where we are here today at NYU Abu Dhabi, but the complete commitment to education, and education as the foundation, the bedrock. And I say that with a bias as someone who's been in education my whole life, because education is really the foundation for innovation, which is effectively invention, but invention that creates something better than what's come before it. And that's innovation, right? And so number one, capital, number two, education, and number three, infrastructure. Having an infrastructure world-class where inventors can go to and feel comfortable that they are in the best place to invent and effectively innovate.
Excellent, Professor. Going back to His Excellency, Mr. Mohammed, a few weeks ago, you have chaired the first Health Tech Transfer Implementation Committee, which looked at all the applications and saw the possibilities of investing in them, bringing them to the future and to the implementation. What do you think is the potential for the future in this area?
I think the potentials are significant, especially when you look at the UAE. The Department of Health of Abu Dhabi, the government of Abu Dhabi, when establishing the Department of Health of Abu Dhabi, regulation, provider, and health insurance, for the last 10 years, we've been collecting very rich data. I think a data that is unheard of. Every transaction of patients' claims that is being registered, we have the data, we can link it with their medical records, and therefore I think the data we have is an opportunity that in the future we can even predict some of these emerging chronic diseases that are affecting the population, and therefore such technologies, if we can adapt, we all hear about IBM Watson and what they're trying to do. We all hear about new technologies that we can actually try here in the UAE and then help us in preventing people from getting sick.
Excellent. So the message is you have a data mine.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. PRASANTH, being the largest healthcare provider in the private sector in UAE, how do you measure the strategic partnership with the Department of Health in the tech movement? And will NMC help achieving its goal by being in this partnership?
Yeah, definitely. If you really look at it, today, as exactly as you mentioned, the world's largest innovation platforms that happens in whether it is in Asia or we have been very fortunate to be participating in few of the innovation programs, whether it is with Caltech or whether it is Singapore with universities or with Indian universities. But one thing which I have really appreciate the Department of Health is that this initiative is coming in from DOH. So then when an investor comes in, as exactly as you mentioned, that capital is an important element. How can you attract capital into an innovation is very important on the success of any innovation. But somebody is going to put on capital if its return of investment is definitely measurable and is predictable. So predictability is a very important element when it comes to an investment. And I think when Department of Health is coming in along with this program, it gives us a lot of confidence for a private healthcare company like us to definitely invest. We have been currently on discussions with international providers, and we believe there are 4 areas where we can definitely participate on the global change that is happening on technology, with robotics, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and telehealth. And whenever we have been discussing with the OH, and especially with HAMELI, that it's very proactive, very positive. And I think this type of platforms, again, gives a lot of insights to regulators who works in the regulatory bodies, and as well as the investors. And that access and that networking definitely will make it more and more stronger. And that will be a strong case, as Minister mentioned. This is going to be a dream of UAE, and that dream of UAE, which is that this is a scientific hub to be created. I'm sure that these type of networking programs and constant, relationship exercises between regulator and the investors will definitely make a strong case for that.
Thank you very much. And I would like to leverage on that with a question to Professor Stan. Being in HITLAB, and that's an implementation place, if I'm not mistaken. So can you please tell us what is HITLAB and what's the operating model within it?
Yeah, so HITLAB is the world's first really digital health diffusion lab. And so we talk about impact and being able to implement and diffuse these new medical technologies, especially digital technologies, into societies all over the world. We focus on doing proof of concept testing with technologies, digital technologies in real populations to help everyone from Goldman Sachs to the Gates Foundation to the National Health Service in the UK find out which technologies are working and efficacious and which are not. And we do this through 3 different models. One is economic testing to see if a new invention is economically better than something that came before it. Number 2 is experiential testing to see if a technology is experientially better, so that if you have a new watch, like the team over there from HALA, they've developed an activity tracker where they can gamify activity for families, for friends, and really help motivate people to keep on their tracks. It's a phenomenal new experience for activity tracking that brings adults and children together to monitor their activity and be involved in that. So experientially, that's now getting better than your traditional other activity monitors that are out there. And then thirdly, we help study clinical efficacy of these new digital health technologies to find out, is IBM Watson better than what came before it? Is clinically, can IBM Watson be better than or help supplement oncologists in when they're doing cancer diagnostics? And so HITLAB studies these digital technologies for very small amounts of money. So before the national health system invests 7, 8, 9 figures in these expensive technologies, HITLAB is there to do the proof of concept testing for very small amounts of money. And then we're also a teaching lab. So HITLAB, combined with Columbia Business School, offers certifications in digital health research, digital health innovation, and digital health innovation and diffusion.
Okay, and if we talk about the model within it, is it an equity model? Is it a grant? What sort of model do you adopt in embracing these technologies?
So HITLAB is also takes no intellectual property. HITLAB is like the Switzerland of digital healthcare testing. So there's no conflict of interest. So when you come to HITLAB for some advice or some testing to be done or teaching, you know there's no conflict, since we hold no equity in any startups. So that's not one of our revenue models. Our revenue models are grant-based. So for instance, being able to do some research studies for national governments or foundations. Number 2 is teaching. So our revenue model is teaching and education. We offer courses all over the world, boot camps, workshops, what we call executive scholars for people like yourself, where we have tutorials. Effectively, it's almost like a one-on-one tutorial to help teach people about digital health and its research and what it can do. And then thirdly, we do events. So not quite as grand as this one. This is amazing, but events that help raise money for further research and further teaching.
Thank you for the enlightenment. Mr. Mohammed, the Department of Health in Abu Dhabi is transforming into a leader in creating solutions in healthcare. Can you share with us what would be the challenges that we will focus on in next year, or this year actually, because to celebrate them in next year?
As I mentioned, the 10 years data, I think we have huge data mined that we're looking for researchers, we're looking for scholars and innovators to look into, and then help us develop apps or technologies that will help us data mining and then help us make decisions for the future. especially when it comes to the top 5 diseases that we have. We already identified the top 5 diseases and what we can do about preventing people from getting sick or even sicker. So I think for the next round of this award or challenge is going to be more about artificial intelligence technologies around the data we already have and how we can link that with our top 5 diseases.
Very deep dive, and I hope we can together achieve targets within this area. Mr. Prasanth, we would like to know from you, how would you describe the effort in place embracing technology and innovation by the private sector, and what will you be focusing on?
See, if you really look at it from an innovation perspective, we all, from generally when we talk about innovation, we limit our innovation to artificial intelligence or medtech products. But from a private sector perspective or from a healthcare perspective, if you look at it, even today the world goes through 2 big challenges. One is availability of healthcare. I'm not talking only about UAE as a country, I'm talking globally. Availability of healthcare is a big challenge. Second is affordability of healthcare. Out of the 6.5 billion population, not more than 2.5 billion population is having accessible and affordable healthcare. 2/3 of the globe, even today, continues to have big problem of either they don't have healthcare or they can't afford healthcare. And that is something which we parallelly, or like if you ask me, my office, 60% of our time that we spend on innovation is how can we make it available, how can we make it affordable. That could be simple by challenging the simple concept of brick and mortar or bringing the concepts of BPO, the business processing, outsourcing elements. Or like, we currently work with some of the world's best institutions to bring that knowledge, move into areas where it's not available through, maybe through the mobile technology. Or like, we have tried and we have disrupted one of the industry, which I'm very proud to tell, is on the IVF industry. Now, when, we started a very strong IVF practice in Spain, and when there was a problem in Italy, we completely disrupted the brick and mortar. And today, the gametes move from Italy to Spain, and we send back embryo from Spain. And it's the same gynecologist in Italy who inserts the embryo in the woman. So by that, it may look very simple, but the cost, the difficulty, the availability of IVF program is completely challenged. Today, the gametes move between our Spanish facility and Brazilian facility. So these type of activities, which are, we call it either as a product or a service or an application, in all the areas, private sector has to invest on it. And I think that is what we are trying to do that.
Okay. Hearing the discussions and the speeches, keynotes from their excellencies, I think we're moving towards implementation. So I would like to take advantage of having Professor Stan with us and telling us what can we do to make it happen, since you have an existing incubation system in your fine institutions and you're receiving applications and you're deploying these technologies. What should we do to take it further?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what you're doing today is the right way to go. It really is expanding, building on the infrastructure that's been developed in UAE with the electronic health record system and the data that you're collecting. That's world class. That's what everyone is trying to do, and you're already doing it. So that's fantastic. I think the ecosystem you've set here with awards and challenges and proof of concepts and helping people marshal in new technologies, identifying which ones are the ones that should be invested in going forward, and really connecting. If you look at the audience here today, how global it is, really that's important. So engaging global leaders to come to UAE, to participate in the ecosystem here, and to become, to build upon the hub that's already been started. Have the new developing relationships with global entities that are focused and also aligned with you on building innovation and building it here, importing it, exporting it, and becoming really the center, one of the top centers in the world for health science, life science, and digital health innovation.
Actually, you made my budget justification for 2019 much easier. Thank you very much for that. For the last question, I would like to refer it to all of you and start with Mr. Mohammed. What are the initiatives that will help us in celebrating the UAE's 2071 centennial by DOH? We all should be targeting this year to celebrate the centennial in 2071. What will DOH do?
Well, I think this is one of the enablers. So allowing research, innovation, and moving away from being an economy that is dependent on oil. I think very inspiring speech by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. We want to celebrate 50 years from now, the last barrel of oil leaving the UAE. And we already see a lot of work has been done on the ground, and I think what we're doing, allowing research, innovations, homegrown company and businesses that not only being in the UAE, but going international. A good example is NMC. Technologies, hopefully in the future, that will come up with the name of the UAE saying, you know, this was developed in the UAE, now the whole world is adopting these technologies or research. I think this is the kind of initiatives that as Department of Health we want to support and allow to happen here in the UAE and Abu Dhabi so we can achieve that goal.
Very clear vision, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you for that. Mr. PRASANTH, from a private sector point of view, how can you support the path towards 2071?
No, if you look at it, the 2017 vision setting itself is a bold move. It gives a lot of aspiration. It gives a lot of energy and motivates a set of generations from different class of the society. But what I strongly believe UAE can definitely do by 2017 will be, if this become a hub of healthcare patency, where we can, as again, I speak a lot on this affordability and availability across the world, because that is something which I have very much moved on. So this particular issue, if UAE can stand, like how today UAE takes care of the social, as a social responsibility of global, victims, war victims, global, refugees. UAE is a Khalifa Foundation, and all those initiatives take very strong steps to, wipe out the tears of a lot of people in the world. This next 50 years of efforts may really help to eradicate some of the diseases. Maybe we may be able to predict and give a precise medicine to a lot of people who today can't afford. So if a product that can come in from UAE, which can be of use for millions of billions of people across the world, that will definitely give a big credit to the vision of 2070.
I thank you very much for that. And Professor Stan, any final notes from your kind self?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to build on that as well. One of the things that motivates innovators to come to an innovation center like UAE is this greater good mission, this being inspired to do the greater good and to help the greater good. And I think that even when you walk into the airport and you see quotes from leaders past and present about doing the greater good and doing the right thing, certainly people are motivated by a lot of different things. Some people are motivated by greed. Some people are motivated by prestige or peer approval, peer review. Some people are motivated by doing the right thing, and you see that here. And I think that's important to continue building upon, because that again will be another reason for people to want to be here. Will be to help not just the top billion globally, but all the billions globally, using life science technologies, healthcare technologies, digital technologies.
Distinguished guests, I thank you very much for the honor of being with you in this panel, and I hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much.